In this video, we're going to be doing a 4-level analysis of this sentence from the Michael Clay Thompson or MCT Level 6 4-Practice Sentence Analysis program. In 4-Practice Sentence Analysis, basically what we do is we look at the 4 levels of sentence, basically diagramming or analysis, the first level being the parts of speech such as the noun, adjective, preposition, and adverb. Then we move on to level 2, the parts of sentence, where we describe the words that act as subjects and predicates to describe action being taken in a sentence. Then we move to level 3, which is the phrases, such as prepositional phrases or appositive phrases describing sequences or groupings of words that describe something happening in a sentence. Finally, we do level 4, which is the clauses, which describe integral parts of the sentence that form complete ideas. So we're going to perform a complete 4-level sentence analysis here on this sentence from Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe, published in 1820. The sentence states, "Impertinent laymen should ask me if I kept every punctilio of mine order." Okay, we're going to start off on this interesting sentence with level 1 parts of speech. Right away, impertinent as our first word. As a side note, this word has one MCT vocabulary word. Actually here, vocabulary is punctilio, which means a small or insignificant remark, from punct, which means point. Going back to the parts of speech, we have impertinent, which in this case is an adjective because it's modifying the noun layman. What kind of layman? Impertinent layman. So that's how we get to the answer there for impertinent. We know this is an adjective. And of course we know layman is a noun because it's what impertinent is modifying. Alright. Then we have should, which is a verb because it's an action that these impertinent laymen are taking. The layman should do XYZ. Should is the verb in this case, describing an action. Then ask is yet another verb. Asking is an action. Layman should ask XYZ, ask someone to do something else. So that's a verb in this case. Then me is a pronoun. Of course, pretty simple there. We've got if, which is a conjunction in this case because it's actually serving an important purpose in this sentence. Because we're going to see later that we have 2 clauses in this sentence, and the if, in this case, is going to separate these 2 clauses. It's actually part of one of the second clauses, but it still separates them. So the conjunction here is serving as the divider between 2 parts of the sentence. Impertinent layman should ask me, then if, it's kind of describing going into a different subject, if I kept a blah. Okay, so that's kind of like what we're describing here. It's 2 different parts or divisions of the sentence. Then we have I, which is a pronoun. Getting things quite cramped in here. I, pronoun. And then kept is going to be a verb. That's an action that's being taken. I kept, and then XYZ. Every, in this case, is an adjective because you're modifying the noun punctilio. It's every punctilio. It's the modifying there. So punctilio is a noun. Then of is a preposition. As we've seen in previous sentences, it's part of a prepositional phrase. Of is describing a location or position of something. Then mine is an adjective. It's modifying the noun order. Whose order is it? It's mine order. That's what it's doing. It's modifying. So order is a noun. Okay. So that concludes the rather interesting parts of speech. That's level 1 there. Now we're going to begin to move on to level 2, or parts of sentence. So layman, in this case, is our subject, because a subject always has to be a noun or a pronoun. So we look for our first subject, and we can see that it's layman, because that's the thing that's taking the action. It's the actually, there's a pronoun here, there's a pronoun there, but if we look at those, they wouldn't make any sense, because what would the predicate be? A subject always needs a predicate pair. For example, if the subject really was me, then what is me doing? There's no valid me didn't keep. It's not really fitting the description here. And similarly, I, as the subject, wouldn't do anything for the first clause. Now, that's going to be the subject of the second clause, But we're not quite there yet. We're going to start off with the first clause. So, layman is the subject. And should, this is going to be quite interesting, and not just should ask me, that is the compound predicate. And this is compound in this case because the laymen are taking the action of asking me, not just should. The laymen should ask me if I could. So that's a very complex sentence structure there. So that's our compound predicate. Should ask me all the way through there. Those three words. That's our AVP. Okay. Now we have some very interesting things coming up here. We have an indirect object, and where that's going to be is an indirect object is going to be describing the recipient of the action of a direct object. The direct object, in fact, is all the way out, starting from if and going to the entire rest of the sentence. Because in this case, we have layman should ask me if I kept every punctilio of mine order. So it's the entire rest of the sentence, because in this case, the direct object is describing the recipient of the layman's actions. That's why it's the entire rest of the sentence. So we have to fill in the DO as being for the entire rest of the sentence here. And we've got an IO, the indirect object, that's the recipient of this action. Now you can see immediately the laymen are taking the action of asking, and the direct object of this asking is if I kept every punctilio. That's the purpose of their asking. And the indirect recipient is me, because what the laymen are really asking is me, the original person. That's going to be the indirect object, which is nested right there inside the AVP, single word there. Very interesting structure. Okay, so that's just for the first clause. Now we must look into the second clause because we've got additional subject-predicate pairs. Our second subject is the I, the pronoun, right here. And if you look closely, I is the pronoun. If you look closely, you can see the action that I is taking. I kept. The predicate is the verb. In this case, kept. So we've got our AVP set as kept here. That's our subject-predicate pair. I kept, subject, AVP. Okay. We've got that taken care of. We have yet another thing, though. Our final thing for this level 2, it's yet another direct object, because it's the recipient of the action that I is taking. It's I keep, or I kept in this case. So you can see I kept punctilio makes sense as a subject-predicate DO pair. The punctilio is what the person is keeping. So we have a single additional nested DO here. That's punctilio. Alright. So that's a very interesting level 2 there, part of the sentence. A lot going on there. A lot of nested things. Just gotta keep track of all of it by looking at the relationships between words. That's the main way you're going to be able to keep track of all this. Alright. Now we have a comparatively simple level 3 phrases. We only have one phrase. It's really easy to point out here. Of mine order. That's a prepositional phrase. We've got the preposition, then the adjective, then the noun. The object of the preposition is order. It's the object of the location or the place that the prepositional phrase is describing. Of mine order. So that is our only prepositional phrase right here. Last 3 words of the sentence. Of mine order. Okay, so that's the only phrase for this entire sentence. There's nothing else going on here. No other prepositions, no positives, no gerunds, no participles. That's going to be it for this sentence. And we have our final level now. Level 4 clauses, and this is going to be quite complex because we've got all this nested stuff in here. It's going to be hard to make sense of all of it. But the important thing here is to look at the functions that each word is playing, the roles they're playing. So we've got our first subject-predicate pair here. That's going to be the first part of this sentence. So the first part over here, we're going to look at this very closely. Our subject-predicate, the independent clause is going to span from the beginning of the sentence up until here. It's going to cut off. The if is not part of it. It's only going to be impertinent layman should ask me. Those are the only words part of the independent clause. So this right here is an independent clause. And as you can see, this clause envelops the first subject predicate pair and the IO. Layman should ask me, where me is the IO. That's part of this independent clause. Impertinent layman should ask me. That is functioning as one part of a sentence. That's the independent clause. That would form a complete sentence technically. It wouldn't make much sense on its own, but it technically is a complete sentence. It's not a fragment, because it has a complete subject-predicate set. So then we have, moving on to the next part of this, we have the dependent clause, which is going to be pretty much the rest of the sentence starting from the if. So it's if and then all the way to the end of the sentence. The independent clause is impertinent layman should ask me, and then we have if I kept every punctilio for the rest of the sentence. That's the dependent. Okay, and this dependent clause contains the large direct object we have over there, the every punctilio, and the if I kept every punctilio, all of that. So the entire second half of the sentence. Alright, so we've labeled our two clauses now. Quite complex there. In fact, this is so complex that we must call it a complex declarative sentence, because we've got two different clause types here, the independent and the dependent. So this is an independent, dependent, or ID. There's no comma there, just ID complex sentence. This is a declarative sentence because it's not exclaiming or ordering, it's just declaring what's going on here. So this is an ID complex sentence, pretty simple, nothing crazy or ICCIs, just ID, where we have an independent clause and a dependent clause. A complex sentence here because we've got two different clause types. Alright, so we've completed analyzing this sentence from Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe, published 1820. Very complex here. We had several layers of nested DOs and nested predicates and IOs in level 2 in particular. Level 3 was very simple. Level 1 was a little bit complex there with the pronouns and the conjunctions getting in there. Level 4 was pretty standard. We had a ID complex sentence. And as a review of the vocabulary here, the keyword is punctilio, which means a small or insignificant remark, from punct, meaning point. Alright, we've successfully completed the analysis for this sentence from the Michael Clay Thompson Level 6 4 Practice Sentence Analysis Program. And stay tuned for more sentence analysis videos in the future.